the friendship is sharing deal.
Because I want one of your McNuggets.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.
This is Janelle from Chicago. Get exclusive podcasts and more at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia. Just like I do.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On, the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And this week, a Tokyo cop in London hopes to find his brother before the Yakuza do. We'll talk about the Anglo-Japanese crime thriller Giri, Haji. Then we'll talk about the re-release of the miniseries Waco through the eyes of those on both sides of the Branch Davidian standoff. That series is on Netflix. Joining me to get that done and more is my real-life husband and true crime co-author, former TV journalist, and long-haired hunk, Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
I started combing my hair forward.
I know.
And I looked like one of the Beatles, 1965.
I know. You look like your dad.
Except in the front.
You look like your dad. Your hair's getting like lush and wavy on the top.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot my hair gets curly when it gets longer because it hasn't been long since college.
I know.
Yeah.
You're like a middle school hockey player.
Fantastic.
I hope he doesn't smell like one.
Yeah.
Also with us is journalist, true crime author, former defense investigator, licensed private investigator, certified cat lady, and our favorite small town walking tour guide, Laura Bricker. Hello, Laura.
Yeah, hello. That is me. I'm trying out for iFit, where they have people that go and take you on walking tours. So, not really.
Well,
but.
Laura, you may have to improve your vertical video stylings if you want to try it out for something. And finally, our captain of woke cynicism, the author behind the noir novels known as the City Trilogy and the host of the hit podcast Strange Arrivals, Toby Ball. Good evening, Toby.
It's a real pleasure to be talking with you, Rebecca.
Toby Koresh over there. Wow. He's found happiness.
Toby, can you come out, though? What if I send him some milk, Toby?
Now, Kevin, we have a little business we have to do before we start the review part of the podcast.
Yes.
What will our listeners find at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia if they join up right now? What will they find there?
We're going to find the latest episode of Married with Podcast.
Yes,
and
it gets deep.
The Crime Writers on After Show, in which we talk about
In the Dark, new series.
Yeah, with their episode that takes place at Parchment Prison.
Yes, and I also want to just fill you guys in a little bit on the latest season of Undisclosed and why you should maybe give it a listen because it's freaking bananas.
Oh, okay.
And then also, Kevin, we should just say this week's episode of Married with Podcast features some of the most intense and unusual questions we have ever received. I really, really want our listeners to hear it. It's really something.
Yeah. And one other thing, a very special thing this week, Toby is going to be recording the Deep Dive Book Club podcast as a video crowdcast.
Yes.
And so our Patreon listeners will still get the podcast, but for some of the select members, they'll not only get to watch the video, they can partake in the discussion, come on the video,
I'll be there.
Talk with Toby and his 3 stellar guests.
4. I'm going to be there. I'm totally
you're not one of
in.
the guests, Rebecca. You're just party crashing because you love the book Catch and Kill.
All right, well, speaking of Patreon, Kevin, who are our patron saints of the week this week?
Our Patreon patron saints are Hillary Zelaznik and Reader Woker. Bless you.
Yes, bless you. And bless everybody.
Is that the famous musician, Rita Walker?
Kevin, do you want to fill our listeners in and give a little update on that?
Our
front?
other patron saint is Steve King from Bangor. Thanks, Steve.
Jonathan Irving from Vermont.
Yeah, so, hey, patrons are regular folks just like you and I.
Except some of them.
Some of them have written multiple New York Times bestsellers and have an adaptation coming out on Netflix later this summer.
Yes.
And that would be Lee Bardugo.
Yes. So Toby's offhanded question last week is Lee Bardugo, the famous author.
Yeah.
That's my daughter's favorite author, Lee Bardugo. Yes.
Yeah, it is.
She's been on our Patreon for like 2 years. Hello, Lee.
Yeah. Maybe she'll join us for one of the Kevin After Drinks videos.
Ooh, that would be fun.
On Patreon, just like you could.
At
if you join.
patreon.com.
Exactly.
/Partners in Crime Media. All right. Well, let's get the show started, shall we?
Yes.
Let's do it.
電話のそばで待ってろ。飯が冷えるだろう。
A murder in London sparks a gang war in Tokyo among rival Yakuza. Detective Kenzo Mori is told his brother, thought to be dead, may be living in London and central to the conflict. Yuto Mori, once a henchman for a Japanese mob boss, has now taken a similar role with a London mobster.
My name is Yuto Mori. I was a Yakuza contract killer in Tokyo for the Fukuhara crime family. I know gangsters. I know how to protect them. If you hire me, then the next time someone puts a knife on you, they'll be dead before they have a chance to ruin your shot.
Sent by both his department and the Yakuza, Kenzo goes to England to find Yuto before either law enforcement or the mob do. Along the way, he befriends a drug-addicted rent boy named Rodney, who lives for drama.
Fuck off. No, listen to me. You've got to tell him that if he wants you, he's got to start acting like a man and not behaving like a little bitch. Because do you know what a little bitch gets? No, neither do I. Because I don't associate with them, and neither should you. Gonna get gin and tonic.
With his family in crisis back in Japan, Kenzo fights his feelings for Sarah, a local detective who discovers his secret mission.
What are you going to do about Yuto?
If we find Yuto, he'll be arrested. And if you try to obstruct that, you'll be arrested too.
And the fact that you know I'm his brother now?
I don't know.
Giri Haji is from BBC Two and Netflix. The title translates as Duty, Shame. It's a bilingual drama that combines a police procedural, family melodrama, mob thriller, forbidden romance, a coming-of-age tale, plus a little bit of fantasy and an ending unlike anything we have ever seen. Now, spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about plot points from Giri Haji, so if you want to remain spoiler-free, please go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down review. So, Laura, we've got 2 countries represented here. We've watched lots of British procedurals, and I think we've even reviewed a few on this show. But here we have some elements, too, of Japanese culture. A lot of the show takes place in Japan, and, of course, we're introduced to the Yakuza in this show. What did you think of this dual country take on an organized crime / police procedural?
Well, I think to me that was probably the most interesting part of this series because, I've watched a lot of different British crime shows, but I haven't actually watched any Tokyo crime shows. And I certainly haven't watched any Tokyo / London shows with organized crime and the mob in both countries. So I think that was really interesting to see sort of the dynamics between, the authorities and the mob in Tokyo, and then how that was different in London. And also that sort of, cross-cultural, like when, you have somebody going then from the Tokyo mob infiltrating and becoming part of the London mob. I mean, that was also very interesting, but it was just different setting for crime than we've had in the past. So I thought it was nice. It was kind of refreshing to see something new.
Kevin, you like the premise of the show, right?
Oh, yeah, very much. I mean, it's another one of these cross-cultural police dramas like Valhalla, like Bridge, Brun, we like to screw around calling it that.
Our Danish listeners love it when we do that.
But it's like we're very familiar here with English crime shows. I can't say I've seen an awful lot of stuff from Japan in the police realm. And it doesn't feel like a typical English police drama at all. like it doesn't have sort of the same sensibilities. It has a lot of the same places and the same setting, but it isn't that. And I don't know how much of it like really appropriates from Japanese culture other than sort of the characters and the setting. So I don't know if it's like a little bit of that style or not. I think it's kind of unique, sort of its format, and a lot of the things and the sort of genre bending stuff that it's doing. But I thought just the idea that Kenzo has to go to London to hopefully find his dead brother in order to stop a mob war. And if he does find, the consequences of him actually finding him are almost as bad as him not. So I like the setup right away.
There's one thing I'm going to push back on. And in one way, it is very British. It is very typical of British dramas, procedurals, comedies, British media to have as sort of a central group, like a Scooby Gang, like a cast of characters from different walks of life that kind of all coalesce together and do something together. Like, just think for a second about like, you know, sort of all the British films you've watched, like the big ones in pop culture. It's sort of like a weird gang of friends. Very often you don't see how they meet. You just see them all together and it's like, well, how do these people know each other?
But this doesn't feel like Prime Suspect. And it doesn't feel like...
No, but that is one element of it that did feel very British to me. Toby, your first note, very first sentence, makes me want to punch you in the face as a fellow reviewer, but all opinions here are respected.
Apparently not.
You think Giri Haji was silly, Toby Ball. Tell me why you think it's silly.
Why do you think it's not silly?
I loved it, Toby.
I think it's fine.
I think it has a tremendous amount of heart, and I just loved it.
I like it in the same way that I like Roger Moore era James Bond films, in that you just can't you don't want to think about it too much. Like you could just watch like thing after thing after thing happening, but like the plotting's ridiculous, right? Like you're not watching it for the plot, because the plot is just bizarre and like totally dependent upon people making weird decisions and coincidences, and in a city the size of London, like happening upon like your uncle crawling at the verge of death through an alley. And, you know, it's silly.
Is it sillier than, say, Killing Eve, which you like?
Well, Killing Eve, I kind of feel like has a tongue-in-cheek aspect to it that this absolutely 100% I don't believe does. You know, I enjoyed this. I enjoyed watching it because it moves super fast and there's stuff happening. You're like, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? But like, you can't really take it too seriously because the things that the people do are just like mind-bogglingly nonsensical. Like, why would a Japanese cop who's visiting London decide to join a bunch of Albanian gangsters who are going to go on a like balls out, guns blazing raid on a British mob? I mean, it's just like, why would you do that? Where your teenage daughter is like walking around, like the chances are you're going to be killed and your teenage daughter is going to be like stuck in London.
It's okay. She has a new friend, Toby. It's totally cool.
She has many friends.
It makes zero sense. And my biggest issue with it is that I think it kind of took itself super seriously at times, but most of it is just the equivalent of like a beach read thriller.
Yes.
Where it's just like you keep flipping the pages because you're like, oh, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next?
It's fantastical. It is, and it's that way on purpose. Like, I don't think it takes itself seriously. Toby, there is this incredible barrier between Kenzo and Sarah that never goes acknowledged in the show. And this is like the moment I realized like this is not going to be a straight thing. Kenzo, who has this very intense Japanese accent, comes to London, speaks English pretty well, but then meets Sarah, who has this unbelievably strong Scottish accent and uses a bunch of like local vernacular and seems to understand every single word she says.
This is yours. It's a welcome pack. It's got a timetable and a map, some stickers for some reason.
Thank you.
You must be jet lagged. A cup of coffee and a McMuffin usually does the trick. Or there's always lying in the fetal position and weeping.
Sarah. Kenzo.
I mean, that's another thing. And I didn't even think about that until Kevin was talking. But, you've got this like setup of two cultures that seem to operate in exactly the same way. Or if they don't operate exactly the same way, they certainly understand each other's rules. And that includes the police and organized crime. Like everybody's like on the same page all the time, which is sort of the opposite of most of these things where sort of the cultural differences are like, quote unquote, part of the fun. It seems like cultural differences hardly play any role at all in this.
But see, that's what I loved about it. I mean, I have to be honest with you. I'm sorry just to make this a me and Toby thing. The two main things I loved about the show are A, they didn't do any of the stereotypical bullshit that you expected them to do. Taki being gay, not a big deal. Ray and Kenzo's relationship falling apart seems to be something the family is going to be able to live with and move on from. The whole, all the stuff, Rodney emerging as a character who's actually like a good guy. Fine. I loved the characters so much. I love that they dispense with the expected so quickly and so happily. And I love that we were just able to see the Scooby Gang coalesce quickly, get into action. And yeah, some of the action was real stupid. I don't know, but those are the things I loved about it. Laurie, I know that you also thought that this shootout with the Albanian mafia was too much, right?
Yeah, I thought that was for us to believe that we have this straight-laced detective who goes there and all of a sudden now he's totally willing to go into a building and start shooting at people. I'm that's where I was yeah, this is kind of going off the rails. But I felt like when you were talking about before, where we're the different dynamics between people, I feel like this almost tried to be too many different things to too many different people. We had the family drama, the crime drama, the thriller, the coming of age, the love story, and I just felt like
the Thelma and Louise with the mom and grandmother back in Japan.
That was my favorite part of the whole thing. Oh my God, that was my favorite part when they're out there and they put the poopy diaper on that guy's head. I was like, yes, take that, asshole. Yeah, so I felt but it just got more, it reminded me of, as I've been here doing middle school tutor help, homeschool, I wouldn't call it homeschool, whatever you want to call me in this day and age of pandemic, the butterfly effect. We were just doing some time travel stuff and the ripple effect sort of. And I felt like this was supposed to be a case study in that, how one action that happened when this guy faked his death and then all this other stuff happens and it's a train that's going to crash and it's going to crash, but you can't stop it. And I felt like it was a little bit heavy-handed with that sort of theme. I mean, at one point, one of the detectives even said something actually, I think it was Sarah who said we've been here before. Doesn't it feel like we're going around and around to the same place that we've already and I was just oh, okay. So there was definitely kind of that sort of theme that they tried to weave in. So I feel like there was a lot of different things happening in terms of genres.
It was ambitious, right, Kevin? A lot of mixed genres. We had even some animation in this. We have some sort of very surprising scenes that kind of come out of nowhere, like Sarah's dinner, finding out that she's Jewish and sort of bringing that aspect of things into it. The mom and wife becoming Thelma and Louise. Right. And what did you think of? Was this too ambitious for you?
No, I mean, it did have, parts that worked better than others. I mean, the Taki's coming of age story was good, but was it as good as Rodney's haunting, where he keeps seeing the ghost of his boyfriend who died? Some things worked better than others, but on the whole, I thought it was really good.
It's weird. I mean, I should be clear with our audience as I'm defending it vehemently. It's super weird.
Yeah.
But it's weird in a way that I like.
Well, eventually we got to discuss that.
We're going to talk about that
scene
right now.
Yeah.
The climax of this show comes a scene that you are either going to love or you hate. I loved it. It made me cry. I don't know how you guys felt about it, except for Toby, who sent me a text saying, this interpretive dance scene is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And I said, no, it's not. And he said, you mean I've seen a stupider thing than this? So Toby, just go talk about how much you hated the interpretive dance. Go.
I guess I'd give him credit for trying to do something a little bit different. But the interpretive dance scene is too literal. The people aren't really dancers, so it seems kind of awkward. And the whole time I was just thinking, have you ever seen the movie Top Secret?
Yes.
With Val Kilmer?
Yes.
Do you know that dance scene?
Is your daughter 16? Yes, I do.
the ballet scene?
Yes.
So I was thinking that would make it better, as if they all had enormous cod pieces. But if they were going to try something like that, I think they really needed to nail it. And I just kind of thought all the little moves were just a little too on the money. And it was just oh, okay. So the daughter's trying to get the parents back together. And Kenzo's not sure what he should do about, it's just all right, I got it. You know, you're kind of bringing through all these things that we've kind of gotten before anyway, and you're trying to tie them up in a bow with this kind of, lame interpretive dance. So I thought it was, I couldn't believe what I was watching. and that they were going to sink this much like time, effort, and money into this show to have that be the final like scene. And the thing that I think they want people to remember it for is this kind of climax. Did not work for me. Maybe it did for other people.
I wanted to be in the writer's room when they were putting this together. All right, hear me out. Here's how I want to finish this. All right?
You sound like Abbott.
Instead of a shootout, how about instead we go to black and white, and then we start, Kenzo and Yuto will start dancing. But it'd be like,
I hate you, I love you, I hate you.
I hate you, I love you. It'd be all his emotions wrapped up in one.
It just went on and on and on.
Yeah, Paul, I'm not feeling that, but we'll give it a shot.
Laura, I have a question for you. There is sort of an unresolved thread, and I'd love to know if you have any theories. We are led to believe throughout much of the series that Sarah is being harassed by her ex, Ian, who she had sent to prison. Her, cop ex, who was both cheating on her and was a dirty cop. The beginning of the series, when we first meet her, and by the way, I just freaking love her as a character. I do. I just love her. We've seen that someone has put a giant black snake through her mailbox, which she then has to like chase out with a lighter. And it turns out it wasn't Ian. What do you think was going on? Who was harassing her? Who threw the brick through her window, and who put that snake through her mail slot?
First of all, I just like to say I never knew that you could get rid of a big terrifying snake with a lighter. So I definitely. Snakes, I am absolutely like
you learned
terrified of snakes. And so I was like, I'm going to file that away. If a big snake comes in my house, I'm going to have a lighter handy. But, that was because I was like, it was clear like in the end that the ex-boyfriend didn't quite seem to be as evil as you were led to believe. And I was like, So I was like, okay, so is it either the other woman that he was sleeping with? Mm-hmm. Was it the big police guy who doesn't like her, who was friends with her ex? So I think it was like somebody in the police department who had a grudge against her for having put this guy away, but I don't think it was him.
I thought it was Kenzo who put the snake in her mail slot.
No, it was not. That was a different snake.
Different mail slot.
Oh, dear.
I'll say I actually thought that was a really great head fake because we were, I think... our assumption was that he had been an abusive boyfriend. I mean, there was a lot of like sort of assumptions that the viewer, I think we like leaped all these conclusions. Right. And then to sort of see the way that unfolds and it's, he's, planting evidence, but really she's just pissed at him because he's sleeping with that other woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I thought that was a really great plot twist that sort of hints at Sarah not being perfect because, she's sort of set up as a really perfect protagonist in the style of British cops, the way they very often are. And she's not. She was not wrong to like turn her boyfriend in. She was not. However, as he asks her, are you really mad that I did that? Or are you just pissed at me for sleeping around? And she's like, well, both. I don't know. I thought that was pretty good.
Can we talk about the fingers? Please?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Well, Laura, you're not familiar with the Yakuza tradition of cutting off a pinky as a way to make up for killing somebody's man?
Can you imagine having to cut your finger off like that and then be like, yeah, it's fine. I'm going to wrap it up in this little napkin now and turn it in. I'm like,
and hand it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
My goodness.
What did you guys think of curious, because I thought it was just such another great twist. What did you think of the plot twist at the end where we find out that the British cop who's sent there, everyone thinks is just a loser, was actually kind of a major figure who was, kind of a hidden spy who actually spoke Japanese and was kind of a plant. Toby, what did you think of that plot twist?
Yeah, it was good.
Toby's like, why wasn't he in the dance number, though?
The sex tourist. He was
again, it would have been better. Yeah, I my favorite character in the whole thing is the fat partner who's like always a little disheveled and has like funny things to say that Kenzo just like doesn't have time for, or is just... he's basically pretty humorless anyway, but that dynamic I thought was pretty funny.
I was surprised by Rodney.
Yeah, me too.
Because, when you first see him, He's sort of like, I mean, we heard the clip. He's sort of
over the
aggressive.
top.
Yeah, a little over the top. He's very extra. But they wrote him with a lot of depth, and it was acted very well. So by the end, when we get to the final scene, for his final scene, because he's not with the folks at the shootout.
He's not in the dance number.
Yeah, he's up with his ma.
His alcoholic absent mom.
Yeah, I felt a strange connection to him.
Yeah.
So that was a surprise.
I loved Rodney. I really did. I thought that he doesn't have a redemptive arc like a more ham. I mean, this is a very ham-fisted show, but like a different kind of cheesier show that didn't write characters well would not have had him accidentally kill Ian right before the end of the show. And he was still making like terrible mistakes, even as you had come to kind of love him as a character. I thought it was a very interesting arc too.
Right.
All right. Well, should we do what we do and let our listeners know whether or not they should check out Giri Haji on Netflix? I promise it's not like anything else you've seen before. It's certainly not like anything we've ever reviewed on this show before. Laura Bricker, what about you? Thumbs up or thumbs down for this series on Netflix?
I'll give it a thumbs up. It's not like my favorite thing I ever watched, but I did enjoy it. It was definitely unique in that it had, two cultures that we haven't seen combined in a crime show before, and that was very interesting. And bonus, I learned how to get a snake out of my house if one comes in. So yeah, it was definitely different, and it was interesting, and it moved along quickly. Some of it wasn't as believable as it could have been, but you know what? It was enjoyable.
Toya Ball, what about you? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Giri Haji on Netflix?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in the Laura Bricker camp on this, and that I'll give it a thumbs up, but it's not great. But it's entertaining, and especially now, if you've got 8 hours that you're just looking for something to watch, that's going to be kind of entertaining. And you could get up and grab something to eat and come back, and it's probably okay. I would say, check it out. I mean, it's not boring.
Kevin Flynn.
Yeah, I'm a thumbs up. I really did like this. I think it's a feat when an actor can be more compelling in his second language than many actors are in their first.
Are you talking about our friend Kenzo?
Kenzo.
I'm sorry.
And
I can't.
Yuto.
I love the way Sarah says
and the
his
actor
name.
who plays Yuto.
Yeah.
I thought when we see him as a young man and kind of a fumbling juvenile kind of character to an assassin, I thought that was done very well. I looked up the names because, writers always like to screw around with who they name people. And Kenzo is a Japanese name. Yuto also translates to hot water, which he's always in hot water.
Yeah.
And the last name, Mori, is a Japanese surname, but in Latin, it means death. So I thought that was, I thought that was clever. Tip of the hat to the writers.
What does Sarah mean?
It's biblical, I know that. Look, Giri Haji doesn't feel like, a British drama at all, but it seems like it's something completely on its own. It's artistic without being art house.
Wow. Kevin, I'm glad you liked it. I think more than Laura and Toby did. I loved this so much. And I keep thinking about it. It's one of those things that I watch and I keep thinking about after I watched it. Like I wish I could watch it again for the first time because it's was so cool to me. I think one of the reasons I liked it so much is that it starts as a very straight procedural. Dead person, what happened, lots of shootouts, what's going on next. Like it says, the setup feels familiar, but then over the course of the episodes, they drop in these small fantastical elements that they then increase dropping in. So it's like, by episode 3 or 4, whatever, you have like some animation or whatever, but I feel like you're primed for it. At least I was. I love the characters so much. I just think it has a tremendous amount of heart. It's so weird and so different than anything else we've seen in so long. So I loved it, I think, a lot more than even Kevin and the rest of my panelists. Huge thumbs up for me for Giri Haji.
Want the same expert advice you get from the pros in the store while shopping online at DiscountTire.com? Meet Treadwell, your personal online tire guide that matches you with the perfect tire for your vehicle. Get your best match in 1 minute or less with Treadwell by Discount Tire.
The friendship is sharing deal.
Because I want one of your McNuggets.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.
Moving on.
Get down! Get down!
Trending on Netflix right now is the re-release of the Paramount Network's miniseries Waco.
A lot of shooting in this episode.
It features David Koresh as a thoughtful spiritual leader offering enlightenment to his followers who seek just to be left alone in the Texas wasteland.
Joy doesn't come from having something or being something. It comes from becoming more than you are today.
Meanwhile, we follow FBI hostage negotiator Gary Nosner, who fears the agency's new reliance on military tactics over peaceful resolutions is the wrong direction.
My dad used to say, you don't earn trust by telling people how good you did. You earn it by saying the hard stuff. Now, our greatest asset as an agency is that people believe in us. But if we lose that trust, we might not ever get it back.
After a deadly attempt to serve a warrant leads to an armed standoff, Gary tries to hold off an FBI raid of the compound while convincing the Branch Davidians to surrender. With negotiations going nowhere, Gary focuses on Koresh's number 2, who has grown disillusioned with the movement.
You need to know your people are in a lot more danger than you think. In my experience, the longer these situations go on, the more erratic people's behavior gets.
And we're seeing that on our side, too.
Largely sympathetic to Koresh and his followers, we're taken through the many events that led to the standoff's deadly conclusion. Now we are going to be talking about plot points for Waco, so to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes. Toby Ball, you know a lot more about sort of the history of cults in the United States and like these kinds of movements. One of the things that really struck me, and I was wondering what you thought about it, was how clean and neat the Koresh story in particular was in this film. What did you think of the way David Koresh himself, not the performance by Taylor Kish, which was fine, like completely fine, but what did you think of the writing of David Koresh as a character and the way it was handled in this film?
Well, he's super sanitized. I think there's no question about that. You know, just as kind of an example, they're not required to give like a backstory. But, you know, the reality of how he became the leader of the Branch Davidians is nuts. Like the Branch Davidians, so it was the Seventh-day Adventists had a split, and the Davidians were like a sect of the Seventh-day Adventists. And then the Davidians had a split. And so Branch Davidians is a split from the Davidians. And when he arrived on the scene, the guy who was the head of the Branch Davidians had just died. And his wife, who was in her late 60s, was sort of in charge. So Koresh shows up, and he's in his early 20s and has an affair with this woman. At the same time, marries a 14-year-old who's part of the group, and so incenses the son of the woman, who's, I think, older, who's probably 20 years older than David Koresh, who's sleeping with his mom.
And married to a 14-year-old.
Yeah, that there's like this battle for who's going to be in charge of the Branch Davidians, and the way that the son decides to settle it is they're going to dig up a corpse, and whichever one of them can bring it to life will lead the Branch Davidians. And so he gets the corpse and tries for a couple nights to bring it to life, and of course, doesn't. And Koresh, instead of doing that, like tries to figure out how to bust this guy for like corpse abuse. So he calls the police, and the police are like, we're just going to take your word for it. Like, do you have any proof? So he and some of his buddies like dress up in camis with automatic weapons and storm the Branch Davidian compound and get into a gunfight with the other Branch Davidians. And he shoots the son, doesn't kill him, but shoots him. And that's how he wins the charge of the Branch Davidians. Like, that was it. So when it looks like, when they're kind of portraying him as this sort of, just leave us alone and I'm a man of peace, and, you know, it's like
charismatic leader.
It's like, no, dude, you've shown yourself to be super violent and a pedophile, like right off the bat. That's not even talking about like the weapons and all this stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's an obvious choice that they made to make him seem a lot more benign and sort of normal than in real life David Koresh was.
Yeah, we're not talking about performances or writing or structure of the miniseries. I am still a little uncomfortable with how they minimize the role of the Branch Davidians and, like Toby says, sanitizing it. The characters keep saying, we didn't do anything. Or what did we do that was so bad? And they say it enough times that you start to believe, you start wondering, yeah, what was it? They just keep showing them praying and not wanting to do stuff.
They're just like a little weird religious sect,
Yeah, and it's kind of like this problem that you had with The Devil Next Door, which was about Ivan the Terrible, and you know, the Nazi guard. It's like, okay, the premise is you are going to want the audience to root for this bad person. And so how do you do that? So yeah, naturally you got to write them and make them sympathetic, and so that the dramatic tension is such that we know how it ends, but we got to care about them, and so that we wish things would be different, yada, yada, yada. It's a guy who, I mean, we didn't do anything. You have a bunch of gas masks around, not because you want to pray.
You have an arsenal in your ice cream freezer.
You are planning for this.
Right,
yeah.
right.
And you may not be offensive. Your plans may not be, I want to take these weapons and go into town. But you were definitely waiting for a confrontation to be defensive.
Plus, you're also marrying 12-year-olds and their sisters.
Yeah,
and
they kind of
pretty creepy.
I mean,
they kind of really gloss over a lot of that.
Yeah.
And they don't mind putting the gas down, so to speak, on the government.
Yeah.
About, you know, those tensions. I found that to be interesting.
Well, I don't think there's a lot. I mean, there is debate around it in some circles, but I mean, Toby, just to go you again, like, I'm not wrong that the government is widely believed to have mishandled this standoff, right? As they have been believed to have mishandled other standoffs where they either didn't do enough or they did too much or there were misread tactics or like arguments how it should be handled. I mean,
that's not in dispute.
That's not in dispute that this was mishandled, right, Toby?
Right. I mean, I think there was a misunderstanding about whether that gas would be flammable. You know, at the time there was a lot of pressure because the idea was that children were being abused daily, right? So it's not just, you know, we're bored, this is taking a long time, I want to go home, we look like idiots. It's there are kids being sexually abused in there and we're just sitting here letting it happen. My memory is that Janet Reno was distraught that the gas they used was flammable and that they should have known that that was going to be a catastrophe.
Yeah.
But that could be my faulty memory.
But it also helped lay the groundwork for future standoffs, and up to today, the government not doing much at all.
Right. But the screenplay is really all the conspiracy theory stuff around this.
Yeah.
It really glosses over, was the tear gas flammable? Yes, it is. But they don't even go into any of the, you know, the bit where there are people who left the compound who said, I saw people carrying gas cans to set the fire, that there were V marks in 3 different parts of the.
Hey, listen,
there's just like
that arson science we know is some of it's BS.
Some of it's BS.
So don't get
I'm just saying, you know, you can believe it, and I know. Look, we really have, as we've learned through these many years, no reason to believe the government.
Yeah.
When they say all this stuff, but I also find it hard to believe the Branch Davidians too.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
Laura, you thought it was romanticized as well, right?
Oh yeah, I just thought it was like the total, like the WB version of the Waco story.
Yeah.
I mean, right down to the fact that David Koresh is played from the guy who was in Friday Night Lights, which, you know, so I just felt like it kind of glossed over. I found myself as I was watching it, like, you know, I'm thinking, you know, I would rather see a documentary where we actually hear from some of these people that were involved and the survivor who wrote the book that this was based on. And
those exist. Yeah, there's a lot of those,
and get a little bit more accurate representation, because this was just like, I was like, okay, so like you said, I mean, it's already been said, but just it really came across fairly one-sided.
Well, actually, it came across, I thought, two-sided. And like, it's interesting to me that the source material was 2 books, both Negotiator's book and David Thibodeau's book. And it totally shows, because they're both like fine. Yes, like especially Gary's like, I know something's not going to go great here. Of course, he's played by Michael Shannon, who's a great actor who I love. And Thibodeau, who's played by yet another Culkin brother.
A lesser Culkin.
Oh, don't say that. He's just another Culkin. Yeah. He's no like Eli Manning. Come on. Anyway,
Eli Manning, who's 2-0 in the Super Bowls against the Patriots.
The lesser Manning. Anyway, he he's in the compound and he's reasonable. You know, he's the one who's like a good mentor to the young daughter and is trying to just love, Julia Garner's character. And it very clearly, like, the two of them had some say in the script. Couldn't you feel that, Toby?
Yeah, it's a little heavy-handed, quite honestly. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing to write or to influence a screenplay to make yourself like this sort of infallible hero for both of them.
Yeah.
I mean, they're both by far like the most compassionate, normal, forward-thinking people in their groups. So yeah, except for John Leguizamo, who then completely disappears.
Yes, and he had like one of the most interesting character arcs, right, Kevin?
He did. I mean, this was actually, on paper, a pretty solid cast. I mean, you do have Oscar nominee Michael Shannon, the Koresh guy. What was that guy's name? Taylor Kish.
Yeah.
He's okay. This very breathless performance. I didn't think he was so great.
Julia Garner,
Ruth. Julia Gardner from Ozark and Supergirl, Melissa Benoist. The other ones had like one really good character building scene.
I was 12 when David had his vision that he should take me as his second wife. And nobody knew what to do about it until your dream telling you that God demanded it. And just like that, I became his second wife. And just like that, I had serenity. And just like that, she might be taken away from me, all because of your dream. I mean, what about my dream?
There's I'd say one other really good performance, and that's Paul Sparks as Steve, the number 2 guy.
Paul Sparks we know him from
House of Cards,
yes,
and Boardwalk Empire.
Yes.
He is sort of the emotional center of inside the compound.
I wish that God would have chosen any other person on the earth to speak through instead of him. You know what? Despite everything you're saying, no one's explained to me what we did to deserve all this. You have the power to end this too.
How's that?
You could just leave.
Where he's believable and we feel for him, and
he's a good actor, but the character's written so weird too. I mean, the conflict. He's like,
I think he's in.
Are we supposed to believe that he was really going to leave at that point? Like, there's a lot of weird, like, hemming and hawing stuff. That's like, I know that that's what happened. I mean, that's what Thibodeau's book says, and other survivors say that he was, starting to doubt Koresh at the end. But also to paint him as like another good guy. I mean, he knows what's going on. Like, he's watching this guy bang a 12-year-old. It's not okay.
Yeah.
It's like there's definitely some missing pieces here. Laura, I have a question for you. Were you surprised to learn, turns out it's true, that David Koresh is an aspiring musician who did play covers in local bars and who did play music during the standoff? Were you surprised to hear that?
I was, and I have to say that was probably the best scene out of this whole thing for me, when like their power goes out and they're like, we got them now, and then all of a sudden it's like a rock concert. That was an interesting part to this whole thing. The many talents of David Koresh that we didn't know. Yeah, I was surprised by that.
And when they were in that bar playing My Sharona, I was 100% sure they were going to change the lyrics.
So was I. I was like, he's going to turn this into a Jesus song.
Yeah. My Messiah. Something like that. I just really thought it was going to be that.
Didn't do that. He did not do that.
There's a great documentary called Marjoe, Marjoe, which is about this guy, Marjoe Gortner. And he grew up as the youngest preacher in the United States, and was on sort of the tent revival circuit, and then kind of dropped out of sight, and then comes back and goes back on the circuit, and it's just kind of following him as he goes around. And sort of the thing about it is he's a total charlatan. Like, he doesn't believe it at all, but he knows how to do the act. And it's totally like a rock concert.
Yeah.
Like, it's 100% like he's doing Mick Jagger in front of all these tent revival, like older largely white Southern audiences. So there absolutely is this sort of same kind of thing that it's not surprising to me that a guy like David Koresh, those are his two outlets for that kind of he clearly was charismatic to have these people in his thrall, especially with the weird stuff he's talking about. And those were kind of like his two outlets.
Yeah. But who did it better, Toby? Joe Exotic or David Koresh? Who's a better musician?
It's tough. It's a tough call.
I think we're out
One
there.
actually knows how to play the guitar.
Exactly. We all know now that Joe Exotic didn't actually write nor sing those songs. I kept thinking about Bundyville when we were watching this, and sort of the thread of the reporting there, being
Is there a connection?
Of course there's a connection, and that, that the government has really taken a hands-off approach to intervention when it comes to these fringe groups and people who are heavily armed, who are, using the veil of religion or political beliefs and basically putting the government in a position where they then have to say, do we want another Waco on our hands? Like this is that event, right?
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. And I'd say to our listeners, if you haven't listened to Bundyville and Bundyville Season 2, The Remnant, you really need to listen to those podcasts to get the kind of perspective I think that we were all maybe looking for a little bit more in here, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I don't know. I look at, as I was watching this, I just was thinking about, we're all so isolated feeling right now. We're all holed up in our homes, or in my neighborhood, it's we've got 3 houses in the woods behind us, and those are the people that you see. And I'm like, we could totally become a cult out here. Pretty soon. We're living in this insular little world. We might be already. I don't know.
All right. Well, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know. Should they check out Waco on Netflix? Yes, the series actually came out a couple of years ago on a small network, and now Netflix has re-released it. And I guess in the time of pandemic, anything becomes a hit because this is trending in the top 10. Laura Bricker, what do you think? Should people check out Waco on Netflix? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
I'm going to say no. I think there's better ways to, if you want to learn about Waco, learn about what actually happened than this show. There's a few scenes that are interesting. We have a rock band scene at the end with David Koresh. That was kind of interesting. But I really didn't love this. I felt like it really romanticized the story and kind of glossed over a lot of the important issues. So for me, I really wasn't into it, and there's other things out there you can watch.
Toby Ball, what about you? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Waco?
I'm a thumbs down too. It pains me because I really like Michael Shannon. I don't think it's that good just to begin with. It's not, I didn't sort of enjoy watching it. And then I think it's kind of irresponsible with the way it frames what was happening. And it seems to, in some ways, support this idea that if there are laws that you don't feel like following, as long as you're heavily armed and aren't aggressively going off your property to hassle people, that you should be able to get away with it. And I think there are a fair number of people who believe that. A, I don't agree with that, but B, I don't think that's really the lesson of the Branch Davidian thing. And I think making it that kind of plays into almost a mythology of what happened there, which just isn't accurate.
Kevin, what about you?
I'm also a thumbs down. This is trending now. It got its premiere on the Paramount Network, which used to be Spike, so nobody saw it. Now people are seeing it now, 2 years later. It doesn't feel like prestige television, which is what I think they were hoping this would be. It kind of suffers because we are seeing a non-commercial version of a commercial miniseries. So it has all these hard breaks where the commercials would go that kind of stop the flow and then make every break a mini act that has to be resolved for that. So it doesn't flow the same way. It doesn't look the same. There isn't a polish to it that, a prestige thing on HBO would be, for example. And I am troubled by the depiction of the Branch Davidians and David Koresh. It just is they were complicated for sure. To only sort of paint them as victims and not really give the weight of their sins, which could have made them a more complicated and compelling and interesting bunch of characters, to just make them off as they were harassed by the government, I don't think is responsible either.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that all of you said. I really want to echo Toby's points. This is actually, I think, a miniseries that could do some harm. I think it could propagate some conceptions about what rights mean and should mean in the United States. And I think it's troubling, as we discussed in our conversations about Bundyville, how the government is reticent to crack down on any group, it seems, as long as you're heavily armed, operating under the veil of religion and white. And I think that this show does not do anything to help enlighten us in any way around those causes. And yeah, it's incredibly tragic that so many people died in Waco. And even I don't think all the real people who died were sort of honored or given their due in this. In some ways, weirdly, Randy Weaver's little act at the beginning is way more interesting than the whole rest of this thing. So I'm definitely going to give this a thumbs down. I would say do not watch Waco on Netflix.
Want the same expert advice you get from the pros in the store while shopping online at discounttire.com? Meet Treadwell, your personal online tire guide that matches you with the perfect tire for your vehicle. Get your best match in 1 minute or less with Treadwell by Discount Tire.
The friendship is sharing deal.
Because I want one of your McNuggets.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.
Now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the crime of the week. It wasn't a drunk driver Utah Highway Patrol pulled over this week, driving 35 miles per hour and weaving through the fast lane. Nope. It was a 5-year-old boy. The officer said the little guy was sitting on the edge of the seat so he could reach the pedals. The boy had $3 in his pocket and a dream. He told the officer he got into a fight with his mom because she wouldn't let him get a Lamborghini. So he was heading to California to buy one. Give this boy credit. This junior achiever knew enough to start the engine and merge into the correct highway, heading for the Golden State. He even knew to pull to the side of the road when the sirens came on behind him. It's unclear if authorities are going to charge the parents who left the boy alone with a sibling when they went out and clearly taught their 5-year-old to drive at some point. But panel, here is my question for you.
Stay home, Utah. This is why.
With so many people afraid to go outside, maybe the mom sent this little boy out on purpose. So my question for you is, what kind of errand would you have given your 5-year-old the keys to the car in order to run? Laura Bricker, what do you think?
Timmy fell down the well. No, I'm just kidding. In my house, that would be if we ran out of coffee. It gets pretty ugly. So coffee would send somebody out to the store.
Toy Ball, what about you? What would compel you to let your 5-year-old take a drive in your family car?
We've got so much coffee here that's not going to be an issue for us. I would kill for a good piece of pizza right now.
I think he's saying he would kill a 5-year-old by putting him in a car for a
to get the pizza. If he can get back, sure.
What about you, Kevin?
Well, the errand would obviously be insurance fraud.
Yep.
And can you smash up the car? Because that's exactly what would happen immediately upon leaving the driveway.
I mean, don't you guys want to know? Like, I want to know how that 5-year-old was able to drive so well, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
how can you reach the... I saw the photo. He's a little big boy.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a dog recently that did a similar kind of thing that was driving around and around in a circle? And you're like, how is that possible?
All right, Laura.
But he's actually on the correct highway.
It's not easy to get on the highway when learning to drive when you're 16.
Maybe he just knew how to program the GPS.
All right, Laura
Lamborghinis
Bricker.
of Los Angeles.
We're going to end it on that note, but before we do we have a cat of the week this week?
Well, Rebecca, just for you, we have a dog.
Nice.
Sent in via email from Rich in Brighton, Sussex, UK.
Hi, Rich.
Hello, Rich. Rich has been listening to us since the very beginning.
And Rich.
And then he tells us a little about himself. He lost his eyesight in 2011 due to a rare genetic condition. And it was during that time his sister put him onto cereal. And then he started listening to us.
Nice.
And then after that, he went through some difficult times, but was able to go back to university, completed his 3rd year and got a job. And, coronavirus sucks and things are not so great. He goes on about that, which, we can all agree. It's a very difficult time to be working from home. And it sounds like over there as well. But here is his dog of the week. Gus is on Instagram, and I will get the photo out there. He's dressed up as Prince for a fancy dress competition at Doggy Pride. He is a lovely little 5-year-old Bedlington Terrier, and although he is a little confused as to why we are both home all day, he's used to social distancing, and so he is usually lying down in the other room away from us anyway. So thank you so much, Rich. And it's fun to dress up our pets when we're all at home during coronavirus. So if you have some pet costumes, send them my way.
And Rich, thank you so much for being such a loyal listener to the show. We're thinking of you. We hope you're doing okay in this time of coronavirus. Laura Bricker, if folks want to send their dogs in as submissions to be Cat of the Week and just take it all over with dogs, how can they find you on Twitter?
It's at Laura Bricker, but I would like some cats too, because you can never have enough cats. And thank you to everybody this week who told me about the live webcams where I can watch big cats at the zoo in Australia during the day. I've been watching the otter cam at the Kansas City Zoo, but someone else turned me on to the cat cam.
Nice. Toy Ball, folks want to reach out to you and ask you questions about UFOs and Barney and Betty Hill related to your hit, amazing podcast, Strange Arrivals. How can they find you on Twitter?
They can find me at TobyBallNH.
And Kevin Flynn, if folks want to reach out to you and say, hey, Kevin, how can they find you on Twitter?
At Kevin P. Flynn.
And if you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you can find me both places at Reb Lavoie. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Crime Writers On, and I encourage you so strenuously to join the amazing community in our official Crime Writers On Facebook discussion group. We also have a regular old Facebook page. You can look for that too. Support the show at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. You'll get the Crime Writers On After Show, Married with Podcast, Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast, and Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast. Our theme song was performed by the New York Ska Jazz Ensemble and used with permission. Our line editor is the very handsome and very smart Henry Lavoie. Our social media and newsletter maven is my favorite mama, Meredith Plunkett. This show was recorded in the Yoga Loft above the Bodega in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, otherwise known as Studio C, the closet in our New Hampshire basement, where we always do an interpretive dance based on everyone's reviews. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you later. Offering enlightenment to his followers who seek just to be left alone in the Texas wasteland. Clip 2.
Partners in Crime Media.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.